Chapter 5. Instinct or Extinct. In order to activate our instincts, I'm convinced everything starts with exposure. You cannot be what you do not see. It isn't that exposure gives us instincts, it is that exposure awakens instincts and stops us from ignoring what we know to be true within us. Most people adapt to their environment more quickly than they should. They adjust themselves to the situation rather than adjusting their situation to the dreams they have inside. You'd be surprised to find that you have accepted and adapted to being much less than what you're capable of becoming. It's alarming that people seek to fit in without considering the power they have to cultivate the gifts they've been given. You may even be mystified as to why you aren't further along in life. You have checked off all the boxes on the recipe for success and yet find yourself falling short. Isn't it time for you to understand what you've been given and how to sift the stirrings within so that your survival instincts can surface? As the Zulu taught me, you must combine all your ingredients with the inner wisdom that God has given you if you expect to thrive. My prayer is that you will experience the same kind of revelation that struck me while sitting in a jeep in South Africa as the wizened tribesman proclaimed the elephant is Obadiah. Several years ago, when I came to Dallas, I decided I wanted to buy some land and build affordable housing as a way of giving back to my community. I thought it would help many people who couldn't afford a home to be able to bring the cost down to their individual means. My goal was well intended and came from a good heart, but when I began to gather statistics on the process, I learned something that would inform my hypothesis. People adapt to their own expectations. In other words, we often behave based on our perceptions more than the reality of our actual circumstances. You see, in this case, the reality became clear. People who move into low-cost neighborhoods soon lose interest in repairs and home improvements. If the required investment is small, so is their commitment. They equates with the environment, and so do their children. They assume low-cost means inferior quality, temporary, and inadequate, which of course is not the case, but it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy when they neglect their new homes, ignore needed maintenance, and disrespect their opportunity for advancement. Instead, I learned that the wiser way to influence and affect change was to avoid the subtle segregation that creates sociological constructs for the possibility of ghettos. We learned that mixed income housing creates a stronger tax base, which in turn improves public school systems without subsidies. The result is a win-win. Neighbors influence one another, and not just community maintenance, but through the exchange of ideas that help to raise the diversity in that community. Often we don't recognize the urgings within us because we haven't been exposed to people who affirm their importance. If we don't learn to listen to instinct, then we will soon find ourselves extinct. To ignite your own unique instincts, you must recognize how you have handled them thus far in your life. If we are to institute change, then we must recognize the environmental influences to which we've been exposed. Is your perception of reality screwed by what you expect or by what you really desire? Obviously, our attitude and outlook on life have an enormous influence on both the accuracy of our instincts as well as our inclination to be aware of them and trust their guidance. Instinct of identity. I have a set of twin boys. Well, I say boys, but my sons are actually grown men now, and while they are fraternal, not identical, twins with the same mother and father, they couldn't be any more different. When they were still in the crib, I noticed each had a distinct personality that continued to evolve and solidify as they developed. One is personable and artsy, the other is quiet and independent. One is nurturing and compassionate, the other is responsible and diligent. One is spontaneous and social, the other is methodical and private. I'm certainly not a licensed clinical psychologist trained in early childhood development. I'm just a father who started out peeking over their cribs. While my wife and I never intentionally tried to make them conform to the same personality type, I'm sure we assumed that they were more similar in temperament than they actually were. We probably dressed them alike when they were too young to protest and worked to make sure each got equal attention, but clearly they were not alike. As they grew through puberty into young adulthood, I continue to ponder how two people so closely intertwined in such a small place as the womb, raised in the same house, and parented in identical environments, could gravitate to such different clothing, diverse types of friends, and separate courses of life. In observing them as adult men, I remain fascinated to watch each of them unpack their inventory of uniqueness and become acquainted with the substance of their individuality as they pursue the fulfillment of their divine potential. It's been an often rushes adventure as they've explored and discovered their own uniqueness, for each brings a distinctly remarkable thought, pattern, and skill set to problem solving. Perhaps the primary reason for their successful development as independent, distinct individuals is their commitment to discover the power of their own unique talents, abilities, and proclivities. They clearly are not clones of each other, and they haven't simply become the opposite reaction of each other. Because they're twins, though, they probably face the challenge of self discovery sooner and more deliberately than most of us, and yet their accelerated journey is the same one we are all traversing to know who we are created to be, to know why we're here on this earth, and to live out the pursuit of our divine destiny. Like my twins, many of us share the same variables for success as others around us, and yet we each failed to discover our distinct, personalized combination to unlock that success. Have you ever wondered why people with less talent, fewer resources, and more obstacles than you pass you by? Have you ever attempted to follow a formula or check off 5 easy steps to fulfillment only to become frustrated and feel like you're the exception? Too often, we imitate others and conform to popular standards but fail to tap into our most powerful, most precious resource, our own uniqueness. Obviously, my twin sons shared numerous similarities, both genetic factors and environmental influences, but the fact remained that each of them had been divinely designed as a one-of-a-kind, inimitable reflection of his creator, not of his twin or even his parents. As they matured, my twin sons naturally noticed the ways in which they differed from each other, but more important, they relished, cultivated, and celebrated these differences. As I mentioned before, they were more self-aware and more determined at an earlier age to discover their own unique abilities, interests, and personal passions. As much as they loved each other and enjoyed being twins, nonetheless, they didn't want to be a duplicate of someone else, certainly not each other. Like each one of us, wanted to know the fingerprint of his own personality. They were blessed to have both the motivation and the freedom to explore their inner resources. Growing up, many of us aren't encouraged to identify our individuality. In fact, we were likely told in both word and by example to conform, to fit in, to not stand out, whether it was overtly expressed or covertly implied. The message we got was to accept the status quo and not make waves. This may have been our parents' attempt to make life run smoother, or even to protect us from the scrutiny and often cruel mockery that comes from standing out in a crowd. And yet, most of us knew at an early age that we were not like everyone else, let alone who others wanted us to be. It might have been our desire to stay indoors and get lost in the adventures of the Hardy Boys or Harry Potter instead of playing pickup basketball in the park. From my experience and observations, our true identity rarely enjoys the freedom to emerge without first enduring conformity, social modification, or outright suppression. Peer pressure, as well as parental expectations and the demands of our circumstances, all exert various amounts of force on who we really are. Our instincts may have even guided us to hide parts of ourselves in order to keep them alive. When we were younger, we instinctively knew that we could not express our creativity, unleash our imagination, or announce our dreams without them being injured by the ridicule, rejection, or retaliation of others. As adults, however, we now have the power to liberate ourselves. We need no one else's permission to empower the God-given essence of our identity. Whether we think we have the time, money, or other resources needed to uncover who we really are, it's vitally important that we discover our core and allow it to grow, develop, and flourish. You see, it's not about whether you can afford therapy or complete your education or attend that self-improvement seminar, and it's not about becoming self-absorbed, babying your inner child, or excusing self-indulgence. It's simply about whether you have the courage to look within yourself and embrace all that you find there. Exposure and independence. People successfully living by instinct, the innovators, trailblazers, and playmakers are liberated by their own instinctive drive, the fuel for their own unique GPS systems. This motivational contrast can inspire, equip, and model for you the areas of development required for progress on your own journey. This helps explain why the mixed income housing solution mentioned earlier emerged as the most solid change-inducing one available. We often learn from our differences more than our similarities, and those ascending the ladder of success can watch and learn from those a few rungs above them. On the other hand, we cannot allow imitation or even emulation to dictate our decisions. Our exposure to others must become fuel and not the engine itself, empowering our self-discovery and energizing our instincts. Perhaps considering the way an artist or a designer works may illuminate the process for us. An artist has natural talent, but nonetheless needs instruction, inspiration, and integration in order to produce their own unique innovation. Their natural talent will get them only so far without input from teachers, peers, and practitioners. An artist's exposure to great historical works provides a solid foundation that allows the artist to branch out into new areas of experimentation and hybridization. As one writer once told me, you have to know the rules and the reasons behind them before you can break them. I'm convinced awakening our instincts as a guiding force in our lives operates from a similar paradigm. We need to glimpse what has gone before in order to envision the portals of possibility. We must taste the nectar of past necessity if we are to ferment our own nectar for the future. We should take in as much of the view as possible from higher elevations in order for us to acclimate and climb to our own higher summits. Ultimately, this will require you to step out on your own more than follow in the footsteps of others. The higher you ascend on your own unique path, the fewer the number of trailblazers ahead of you. Allowing your instincts to guide you will be lonely at times. Others, especially those committed to conformity and comfortable in their own cages, may feel threatened as you venture out on your own. They may criticize your passionate pursuits and seek to sabotage your date with destiny. However, if you live instinctively, these critics will never impede your progress for more than a few moments. In my own life, I've never had a hater who's doing better than me. The people ahead of you living in the liberty of instinct-guided uniqueness will welcome you, encourage you, and mentor you. They will inspire you to be a pioneer, not a poser. Only those incarcerated by their unwillingness to listen to their instincts and to take the risks required for success will seek to deter you. We'll discuss more about the temporary obstacles these critics might present in an upcoming chapter, but for now, simply realize that both exposure and independence are required if you are to get in touch with your instinctive wisdom and allow it to guide you to the next level of intentional living. Don't allow those less motivated or committed to tearing down others in an attempt to prop up themselves prevent you from being all that you can be in the fullness of your special, unique, one-of-a-kind identity. Decode your design. Once you're ready to activate your instinct for success, you must actively seek elements of excellence that inspire you. Are you aware of what truly fascinates you? What appeals to your heart and ignites something deep inside you? The news articles that arrest your attention, the topics that tantalize your thought process, the curiosity that compels your unquenchable questions, these are the areas where you can begin to energize your instincts of identity. The decoding process does not require a battery of aptitude tests, personality panels, or psychoanalysis. It simply requires you to become a student of yourself. Right now, go and see what you have bookmarked as favorites on your computer. Look at the images you've collected on Pinterest. What do they all have in common? Whose Twitter feeds have you been compelled to save and return to again and again? What magazines do you always pick up while waiting in the dentist's office? Which blogs magnetically pull you back to ponder on others' observations and affinities? Please keep in mind you must be honest with yourself here. Cut through the books on your bedside table that you're supposed to read or the Snapchat exchanges you feel obligated to return. Others may not know about these interests and excursions in your life, but you know they are there. Your dream to run a bed and breakfast, your curiosity about how to create a new investment portfolio, your guilty pleasure of reading romance novels, your ability to sew a jacket that looks like something off the rack. These are the clues that are all around you, my friend. Use your instincts to guide you to what you love but may not have allowed yourself to admit. Judge up your favorite memories of childhood and what gave you pleasure. Was it building new, never-before-seen structures with Legos, creating stories about your friends set on another planet, caring for your pets with the love and attention of a new parent? Whatever once had the power to float your boat can still rock your world. It may feel silly or childish at first, embarrassing to admit or crazy to consider, but search through the archaeology of your own ambition. Don't disregard any attraction, interest, passion, or proclivity as being too out there to examine and extract information from. You never know what you might discover by thinking outside the box that culture, conformity, and critics have tried to impose. Once you have a decent list of these personal preferences and uniquely special variables, look for patterns, similarities, and common denominators. Group them according to how they move you, speak to you, motivate you, and stimulate you. What sparks your creative impulse? Who motivates you as a role model? Where do you feel most alive? Nothing is off limits as you explore. You are the most fascinating person you will ever know. So don't cover up, deny, suppress, or pretend otherwise. Allow the true you to come out, the softer side, the edgier side, the creative side, the more organized side, the driven side, the liberated side, the who cares what people think side, and this makes me feel alive side. This is the soil where you will discover seeds planted long ago, waiting to burst through the surface of your consciousness and bear fruit. This is the galaxy of stars that can illuminate your journey through whatever darkness you may encounter. This is the area that can give you the satisfaction of knowing that you and you alone are doing what only you can do. If this excavation process intrigues you, then I invite you to spend some time uncovering your greatest vital resources. I merely provide these questions and suggestions here as catalysts for this lifelong learning process.